Redstone is the most powerful yet hard to understand part of Minecraft. I mean, what does this block even do, and how are all of these pressure plates actually different? Also, how do both of those systems then interact with the minecarts, and somehow this all comes together? Well, all will be explained once I hit this button. Because hello, I'm IBX Toycat and welcome back to the Ultimate Guide. Today I'm going to be talking about redstone, and this is one of the things you can do solely with it. Just don't question what happened to the copper bulb in the E there, just like how you'll probably want to question how you actually get started with redstone, and the answer is always redstone dust. This is not just used for crafting many of the crucial components like the redstone block, but it's also very crucial for wiring them all together. It effectively is the copper wiring of the Minecraft world because it came out long before copper, and there are three main ways you can get your hands on this. Mining is, of course, the way most people are thinking about, which is great, and this can be done in deep slate and non-deep slate forms, but then you can get it from either a witch drop or you can get it from a villager. This witch drop is guaranteed, by the way, as of a recent update, very handy, and this villager trade is guaranteed if it is a cleric, so keep that in mind. 1 emerald will immediately become 2 redstone, which isn't a great deal unless you have too many emeralds, but also you can find redstone in the world. There are 3 different structures. There is the jungle temple, there is the woodland mansion in this one specific room, and then there is a third structure where you'll find both this and the redstone comparator, and it's going to be coming up in this video, so if you can guess it, I'd love to know. But for now, here's what you can do to activate redstone. The redstone block will always have a pulse attached, but so too can you use the buttons or the levers. These are the most simple tools for it, and the lever will simply turn on and activate redstone, but buttons will give you an activation length, which is to say you press the button, the redstone turns on, and then eventually the button will turn off. And as a fun fact, different buttons will give different activation lengths, and this was kind of surprising for me to learn, because when you look at these side by side, I can't spot the difference, but a wooden button of any variant, by the way, because they're all the same activation length, a wooden button will give 1.5 seconds of redstone time, or 15 redstone ticks, whereas a regular stone button will give you 1 second, so about, what is that, like a third shorter? Something very crucial to keep in mind is that stone buttons and wood buttons feel the same, and I always assume the same, but they're not actually. Speaking of things that feel the same, tripwire hooks are one of these weird Minecraft items that are also useful for activating something based on motion. Maybe you could argue there's a better version of that nowadays, but we'll come back to that later. But also you can use pressure plates. So with the polished black stone and stone pressure plates, these will only be activated by a mob stepping on them. Most crucial for when you're going into a desert temple. You don't have to worry about the terracotta falling on that pressure plate, but yeah, this is something you should keep in mind, whereas the wooden pressure plates, all of them, by the way, function exactly the same, which is to say an entity of any form stepping on them will activate the redstone charge, and they'll all have the exact same redstone power and the same activation conditions. It's solely just a texture difference. But there are 2 very unique pressure plates in Minecraft. There is the gold pressure plate and there is the iron pressure plate. These are actually called the pressure plate light and pressure plate heavy, but basically this one will activate a signal for every entity on top. So it's not just that it activates all the signal or none of the signal gets more powerful based on how many entities are on there, which I think is incredibly interesting, as you can see, slowly powering the redstone here, and then the iron pressure plate will output for every 10 items on top, and yeah, this different output is one which is best shown off, I think, with the target block. This is a newer redstone component, but depending on how close to the center you hit, more of the redstone will power on. So you saw that led to a redstone charge of about here, because I was quite far off the bullseye, but if I nail this shot on the bullseye, okay, this isn't a bow video, but let's hope we can nail that. You can see it goes a little bit further up here. In fact, wait, that's not nailing it. There we go. Let's really nail it there, and it comes all the way out to here, because the target block will put out a different redstone output based on how close to the center you get. And should we just really do it from top here? There we go, look how good that was. Speaking of how good things are, repeaters are one of the earliest redstone components by comparison, and one of the most useful, because a redstone signal from most sources, i.e. not target blocks or weighted pressure plates or comparators, will extend for a 15 block distance, but this means that eventually the redstone stops being powered. How do you power it past that point? Well, as you can guess, it's the repeater. Just like a Wi-Fi repeater, it will extend that signal, and this is very, very useful for making redstone go over long long distances, like if you wanted to, say, light up a redstone guide sign that was all the way in the distance. By the way, speaking of things that are in the distance, the redstone repeater can also delay the signal because it's got 4 separate settings, which means it looks like this as we turn it on, slowly turning on and slowly turning off, because there is a delay in when it repeats, which means that as redstone gets further and further away, it also takes longer and longer to get there. And speaking of longer and longer to get there, redstone repeaters can also power redstone through any solid block. So if you look right here, the redstone will go through, which is wonderful, but if we look at this block, it won't go through, and that's because it's not a solid block. This isn't me saying I don't like glass. You know, glass is a solid block in that way, but it is me saying that glass is technically transparent, and so redstone won't go through it, which is sometimes a handy feature. Sometimes it's very annoying, but this is one of the things you should know about when working with redstone. Speaking of working with redstone, I think it should be mentioned at this point, the entire video is here to kind of help you understand the basics of each of these pieces, and hopefully that is why zooming through them is helping you with these, although I have definitely cluttered up my inventory. But redstone torches are another crucial component that especially were important in the early days of Minecraft, but are still used to this day because they don't just power some redstone. As you can see right here, it turns on a redstone path, which is lovely, but also they can be used for all sorts of weird logic gates, and so you can do weird things like this, turning on, so the redstone torch will always have the opposite signal of the thing below it, which you can use to have weird systems like this turn on, which as you can see will power that exact same redstone, but in a weird opposite way. This leads to all sorts of weird, again, the logic gates are something that I would love to talk about today, but for now you can just know that redstone torches unlock a whole world of potential computing logic, but if you're just in a survival world, you might be more interested in dispensers or droppers. These two items are fascinating because as someone who knows them, you just want to describe it as, well, a dropper drops items whereas a dispenser dispenses them, but if you're new to Minecraft, you must find that so confusing. Like, what's the difference between the shocked emoji, dropper and the happy emoji dispenser? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, sorry, this is the happy emoji dropper, and this is the shocked emoji dispenser, but the actual difference comes down to how they deal with certain items, because dispensers can drop some items, that's how they kind of go, but it also will turn some items, like, say, fireworks or armor, for an example, or indeed water, or indeed blocks. These will all be shot out of them, and they will activate onto the thing they're next to, so fireworks will launch, water will activate, iron will be equipped, but if we try the same with droppers, it will just throw them onto the ground, very sadly, but this is because of the fact that dispensers are made to interact with the world, whereas droppers are just made to move items around it. And you can use this very powerfully because droppers will transfer items from one to another. Using this redstone repeater delay that I showed you earlier, we can use that to mean that a dropper will slowly move diamonds from here all the way out through to the rest of it, which is something I find to be very satisfying. To show you this again, let's put one in here and then let's activate them, and wow, look at that. The diamond moves from here all the way to there and then is shot out by the dropper at the very end here, something which many people do enjoy. You can also use this horizontally if you want to, so here's a bunch of horizontal droppers, and those are also going to spit out a diamond at me, something which makes them very, very handy, and ultimately these will be used everywhere in people's Minecraft worlds if it weren't for the hopper. The hopper is insane in terms of its value. The actual hopper itself, all it will do is it will take items that you throw into it and it will store them. This is kind of cool because our items in the world can usually otherwise only be picked up by players, but the hopper can pick them up too. This can be useful, so in fact we can drop items from our dropper and then they can be fed right into our item hopper right here. This makes them very useful because then you can send these to your containers, and so if we have, like let's say we want a chest full of something, we could load up that chest with our redstone or our diamonds or our sugar, and it would slowly feed through the system until it gets into these. But the most valuable use for the hopper tends to be the minecart with a hopper. This is single-handedly the item which revolutionizes automatic farms, for better or for worse, because basically a minecart of hopper is a hopper that transports around. So instead of having to have hoppers on every single block you want to collect, you just have to run one of these past them. So to show you this one, let's have our hopper run all the way over there, and this hopper is filled with diamonds, and those diamonds, which can be collected from all over the rail track and indeed above it, can then be fed into a single chest, meaning you can have a diamond farm. I mean, you can't actually have a diamond farm, but you can have a farm of basically anything else, and then have the farm collect into one chest, which you could then do other things with, like have a nice tower to shoot them out, or anything else, but that is the crazy power of the hopper. The redstone comparator is also pretty powerful, it has to be said, so a comparator can output a redstone signal based on the amount of input given. So in this case, for example, with a book, it will output, this is a redstone comparator right here, by the way, very, very cool item, it will output based on what page of the book you're reading. Here is page 1 and 2. As I flip the page though, notice how more redstone turns on. Also notice how redstone comparators generate inside ancient cities, and yeah, if you didn't guess it already, that's the fun trivia for today. You can find redstone in ancient cities. You can find a surprising amount of a guide to redstone inside of there. If for some reason you don't want to watch this video, you want to skip it right now, go to an ancient city, go below the portal, and you will find a really great hands-on guide to it. You can also, if you become a member, download this world and check out these redstone tools for yourself. But yeah, this right here is a hopper, which is going to be filled with snowballs. As we put items into it, you'll notice that the redstone comparator strength slowly goes up. In the same way that as we read more pages of this book, the redstone strength signal goes up and up and up. Wow, isn't this fun? Guess you have to pause the video if you want to see all of those facts, but you can see that that is slowly increasing the redstone output. The same is true for the redstone comparator with with this over here, but also for basically any other item out there. Do you want to measure a chest's output? As we remove some of these blocks of diamonds from the chest, the redstone signal will get weaker. As you can see, it stops over here, more or less, and then as we put those items back in, because let's be honest, I don't need this many blocks of diamonds, but as we put these items back in, the redstone signal then gets stronger and goes all the way to the end. Wow, isn't that nice? I'm gonna build my way back using some of these diamond blocks I've accidentally picked up, and then I'm also going to say that a redstone comparator is great for this. It's my favorite use, but you can use them to, so basically, they also can be used to have different signals be compared, and so what it will do here is when these two signals, when this signal on the side here is stronger than this main signal, it will actually lock the comparator. When the signals contradict, this is what happens. So there's 4 wooden swords in this one, and there's 5 wooden swords in this one. If I take a wooden sword out of this, the two signals are the same, and so the redstone output goes on, and the trapdoor is powered. But when there's a 5th wooden sword in here, then this is locked and can't turn on. But if we then put a 5th wooden sword in here, then we can see the exact same thing happens. You can use this if you want to make a weird paradox, because it will compare the redstone system to itself and continuously find that it's too powerful and then lock itself, and then it'll be more powerful and then unlock itself over and over and over again, which is really fun. You can also use this to make a redstone clock, which is pretty fun. I'll be honest, I've never used this in my world, and I think it's one that I think I should start using because it does seem a little bit less fiddly than the ones I tend to use, although this is pretty fun for how fast it activates. Also, comparators can be used to sort items in a storage system. So if you have a bunch of different items, let's say we've got 7 sand, and we've got 32 cobblestone, and then we've got 32 iron ingots, we can use redstone comparators to measure the output of something and make sure that we only, and combine it with hoppers to make sure that only the right things go to the right chests. This seems insane and almost fictional if you don't know the redstone, but we can guarantee that only sand goes into this chest, only iron goes into this chest, and only cobblestone goes into this one. If you don't believe it, as soon as this iron ingot stack has filled up, this will start filling in with the cobblestone, which is just wonderful to watch, isn't it? It's incredible the automatic sorters you can have, and as long as you have a different hopper filled with garbage items and then the one item you actually want, you can have all of your items perfectly sort themselves as if by magic. This is the power of redstone. Combine, like the fact that a single minecart hopper can collect items from everywhere and put it in one place, and then from one place you can collect all the items and sort them out. It just goes to show that with a little bit of logic, Minecraft goes a long, long way. One of the lesser used redstone pieces, in my experience, is the daylight detector, but it is one of the most fun if you're just trying to build something simple, because it will output a redstone signal based on the time of the day. This means that when it's daytime, you get a redstone signal, but when it's nighttime, you won't, unless you put it into night mode, of course, which can be done by simply using the use button on it, which I find to be very, very fun. I also find redstone lamps to be great. In fact, I'd say redstone lamps and daylight detectors kind of go together like cheese and more cheese. And ultimately, that is why I find it very useful that the redstone lamp can burst, first of all, to power on during the day. Although most people would find it more useful at night. So look, when it turns to night, the redstone lamps turn on. Then it turns to day, and they turn off. Wonderful. But yeah, these are just powered whenever there is redstone power going through them. So when there is a lever turned on, wow, redstone lamp turned on. When there is a button charge, for the length of that redstone pulse, you will get the light into the redstone lamp. But many people wish that when you powered on a lamp like this, it would stay on until you next powered it, which is why we got the copper bulb. So the copper bulb will always output a signal strength of 15, regardless of the oxidation. So that's pretty handy, right? Wow, look at this. We can power our redstone lamps using our copper bulb even. Which is going a little next level there. And also, much like redstone lamps, copper bulbs will emit light when activated, but they don't need constant power, and this is really handy because you can just turn them on when you want to, and you can turn them off when you like, kind of like the light switches in your house, or at least the light switches in my house. I'm not going to comment on what your electric wiring looks like, but most of the time you don't have to hold the switch down, and that's what makes them so useful. These come in 8 different variants, and these different variants will have different light levels based on how waxed, or rather how weathered the bulb actually gets. The most oxidized version is this very, very, very blue one right here, but if it's in its full version, you get this light level of 15, which matches that of a redstone lamp, whereas once it gets too oxidized, it gets a little rough. This is why it's recommended to wax it using honeycomb. Speaking of using honeycomb, what if you didn't do that at all, and instead decided to observe things in the world? Well, this would be the observer block. It's kind of the droppers and the dispensers' weird cousin in terms of appearance, but it does do something very, very useful, which is it's a block update detector in a single block. If you haven't played Minecraft in a while, these things are incredible. They will detect when the block in front of them changes in any way, any block state change, and then it will output a quick redstone signal. So when you change the state of this trapdoor, that is a change in the block, but also when you break the trapdoor, so there is no longer a block there, that's a change in the state too. You can use this to measure the growth of crops. You can use this to measure when sheep eat grass on dirt, for example, but by simply using an observer block, you can see you can output a redstone signal based on the change of something rather than the current state of it. This is pretty cool if you ask me, and is one of the very, very fun things about observer blocks. Oh, yeah, look at that. So, helping me with these, the Ultimate Guide, if you don't know, is a collaboration between myself and this is Chris, who's been making the worlds for these. And if you're not familiar with him, he's very, very good at note block songs in Minecraft. And so to show you how you can use note blocks, which are technically a redstone component, we have not just this right here, which is very fun. As you can see, all of the instruments that you can have in a note block form, but also I asked him to remix a Minecraft song, and can you guess which Minecraft song it is based on hearing this? So here is a note block song which we can have in our Minecraft world, because all of these note blocks will play in that order. Okay, so here's the game. Which Minecraft song, it's a music disc, I'll spoil it for you. Which music disc is that a remix of? That will come up later on in this video, but also in this video we can mention the fact that if you put, the note block sound will vary, not just based on the block below it, but also if you put a mob head above it, it will then play the sounds of that mob, so... The one exception is Steve, which of course can't be found in survival, as you'll know from my rare items ultimate guide, and so it's just a silent note block. If you want one of those, then that's what Steve is here for. Seriously, I do wonder if they're ever going to add a use for the mob head in survival. It's one of those things I think about a lot, but I also think about minecarts a lot. I love minecarts, I wish they were more useful, but there are in fact 5 different minecart rails, and I'm gonna not be able to show you this one because we've gone off the rails a little bit. So obviously these are regular minecart rails, they can curve around really well, and they can take you from one place to another. Then there's the powered rail, which goes real fast. However, if it's turned off, it will go really, really slow. Then we've got the detector rail, which will detect when you're on it and will give a redstone pulse. Wow, look, that's where it ties in, because the minecart rails will actually have redstone signals attached sometimes. But also there is the activator rail, which will activate TNT and also, supposedly, according to the wiki, force players and mobs out of their minecarts. In my experience, it's something that is a very very, very fun and quirky thing to do, but it is something that you should keep in mind. Just like how you should keep in mind that, like I mentioned with the tripwire hook, these exist and are technically great, but Minecraft 1.19 added the Sculk sensor. And yes, we're finally coming to that weird redstone piece. I learned through the course of making these videos, which is one of the fun things about them, by the way. I do learn, and I deliberately relearn certain things to help you with them the best, so that I don't just say things like, well, a dropper drops item and a dispenser dispenses them. I want to actually help you understand things like the Sculk sensor, because this detects movement and motion of anything, and it sends a pulse of redstone through it, which means that using our motion, we can activate a redstone lamp. It's like a motion sensor in real life. However, they will not work if they're blocked by wool, and so that is a fun little fact. Because there's wool between me and this Sculk sensor, it won't be activated. This also applies to carpet, which is why this one isn't activating right now, but it will activate right over here. And now I know what you're thinking. The calibrated Sculk sensor, what does it do? I'm finally going to teach you. So the calibrated Sculk sensor is just a regular Sculk sensor, if you will, except instead of putting out the same redstone output all of the time and moving it from one to the other, it will detect the input much faster, which is really fun. As you can see, if I jump around right here, it's just that little bit faster for the calibrated Sculk sensor, but also crucially, it will output a different signal strength based on how close I am to the thing. So if I walk all the way over here and then I jump, you can see that it sends a weak signal of about 5 redstone pulses. Then if I go a little closer, it's more like 6. A little closer, is it more like 7 now? It looks like it is. And if we stomp right on this, we'll get the full redstone signal strength. So you can use this to detect how far away players are from it. Also, it just looks kind of cool in my opinion, and so if you don't necessarily need redstone, if you want to just make a slightly cool looking Sculk sensor, that is a way. If you have too much amethyst anyway, then why not, right? Speaking of why not, right, let's talk about the Pistons, by far the single most useful redstone block in my opinion. They can be used for all sorts of things. But first, before I do, I need to mention the observer block, the crafter block, which is also the observer block's weird cousin. He wears a mask and he fights crime during the day, and at night he helps you craft Minecraft items. So the crafter is the block that is used for automatic crafting. Here's an example. I put a redstone pulse in, and out comes a diamond block. Wow, look at all these redstone contraptions for making diamonds. Surely that's how rich you'll get if you learn how redstone works. But yeah, you can use these to automatically. So unlike other storage containers, crafters will fill each item slot one at a time. So if we activate this, or turn off the hopper rather, it will slowly fill in one at a time, rather than filling in all the way in the top left, then top right, etc. Just like how this chest would be stored. As you can see, this is how items go into that, but it is different for a crafter, and this is because they're used to craft things. So we can have 4 stone go into a crafter, and it will turn into stone bricks. We could have 2 stone bricks go into a crafter, 3 stone bricks go into a crafter, and it would craft some stone brick slabs. If you had 2 stone brick slabs in a crafter, that would make a chiseled stone brick. And so if we chained these together, because redstone goes from one to the other, we could have all 3 of those things happen at once. And as a result, the stone, which we have right here, instantly becomes a recipe, 3 orders removed. This is incredible if you ask me, and is really great if you want to craft things en masse and are just too lazy to do it in your inventory. But more importantly, it's great for pre-crafting the outputs of farms. And yeah, at this point, I think it's worth mentioning something big might be happening soon. But before it does, I want to explain to you pistons. So pistons are really, really great, right? Because pistons and sticky pistons can push up to 12 blocks each. Here is them pushing 12 blocks. This is a regular piston. Here's a sticky piston. Here's a piston. Here's the sticky piston. They can push 12 blocks, but if you try to push more than 12, it just says no, it's not possible. What's the point? And so this is really wonderful. By the way, oh no, it's getting real close. What's gonna happen when it reaches the end? I've got some bad news. As fun as it would be if this did blow up, the sad answer to that question is there is no redstone attached, and so it's a little bit of an anticlimax. Speaking of anticlimaxes, this is possible because of a flying machine, which you can do because pistons with an observer block, just by using honey blocks to tie them together, can be turned into flying machines. This is one of the reasons that pistons are incredible, but they're also incredible because they literally move blocks in your Minecraft world. They can even destroy certain blocks if you want them to. Dragon eggs, no problem. Moss blocks, goodbye. You want to get rid of your scaffolding too? All of of these blocks will go away, and that's pretty wonderful. But the fact that you can then move pistons with your pistons is the craziest bit to me. If I take this right here and I put it there, you'll notice my piston will be able to move my piston, which then means if I had a piece of redstone on the ground right here, I could then activate this piston, and because pistons can move pistons, you can do crazy things. This design is from Elk Test, but it shows a 4x4 piston door that, from the outside perspective, if you don't see all of this redstone behind it, looks like magic. How do you get all of those blocks there and then immediately get all of those blocks back? The answer, you know, I'll be honest, this isn't real, it's all magic, but that's how good, if you get good with pistons, you get good with some of the insane underlying mechanics in Minecraft, and that is why they are the most valuable Minecraft redstone component, in my opinion. And now you understand, hopefully, how to make all of the basics of redstone. I think I think at this point, if you want to, you could find a redstone guide about a particular thing you want to make or not, but I think it's really fun to experiment with redstone. I think that Minecraft is a game where no one can tell you what you can and cannot do, and so ultimately you get to decide for yourself what you want to do with this. However, I would say, well, I mean, I would die first, but I would say that it is really worth playing around with, because even some things that look incredibly complex can actually just be a few simple behaviors kind of tied together, and you'll have a lot of fun playing around with it. Although, you know, as much as I like to play around with redstone in survival, just keep in mind you might have an easier time testing the design somewhere out first. Or is that too much to say? You tell me. And finally, if you're wondering what that remix of the song was, it was, in fact, Pigstep. So if you guessed that, good job. If you knew Pigstep and the Ancient City, you probably knew everything else in this video, and so I'll say thank you for watching. Let me know if you learned anything from it, and also check out the rest of the Ultimate Guide, because I've had a great time sharing all of this with you, and I look forward to seeing you next week, because this is one of my favorite weekly series where I'm relearning about some of the crucial mechanics of Minecraft, and hopefully you are too. Goodbye.